It started on a Tuesday, the kind of beige day you forget 5 minutes after it's over. I was at my usual nail salon, toes soaking in warm water, scrolling through an article about bone density, because that's what you do when you're 58, and your phone knows you better than your husband. The place was quiet, except for some soft pop music and the buzz of a dryer. Then one of the girls in the next chair put her phone on speaker. Mark's wife? She's like, aging out, a female voice laughed. He says she's more roommate than romance now. Sad, right? My foot jerked so hard I splashed water on the nail tech. Sorry, I muttered, mopping my shin with a towel while my heart slammed into my ribs. Mark, my husband, who last night fell asleep on the couch with his mouth open and his hands still on the remote, the picture of passion. Wait, what does that even mean? The girl next to me asked. The voice on the phone snorted. Like, she's done. He said he feels bad, but she's almost 60, doesn't want kids, stuck in her ways. He needs someone who fits his future, not his past. His words, not mine. I stared at my reflection in the big wall mirror. Gray streaks in my dark hair, yes. Lines around my mouth, sure. But done? Like I was some yogurt he forgot in the back of the fridge? The girl in the chair laughed. So when do you get the promotion from secret to official? Oh, we're getting there, the voice purred. We're having dinner on Friday. He says after that, everything will change. Dinner. Friday. Mark had said he was meeting a client Friday night at some rooftop place downtown. He'd kissed my forehead, called me kiddo, and asked if I could throw in his lucky cufflinks when I did the laundry. My nail tech, Linda, blew gently on my freshly painted toes. You okay, honey? You look like you saw a ghost. Worse, I said. I think I just heard one. Because that voice, I knew it. It belonged to Tara, his rising star at the marketing firm, the one with the glossy hair, brutal stilettos, and a laugh like she'd practiced it in the mirror. I sat there, heart pounding, while the conversation went on. Honestly, if my husband called me aging out, I'd kill him, the friend said. Oh, relax, Tara said. People age out of jobs, relationships, it's life. She had her time. He's just being honest. The words burned, but weirdly they didn't crush me. Instead, a thought slid in, cool and sharp. If I'm aging out of his life, why am I still playing by his script? By the time I left the salon, toes shiny, dignity slightly scuffed, I'd already checked my calendar. Friday night, 7:30 p.m., client dinner in Mark's shared Google schedule. I walked to my car, unlocked it, and sank into the driver's seat. My hands were shaking, but my mind was suddenly very, very clear. If he wanted dinner, he would have dinner, just not the one he was expecting. I pulled out my phone, opened a new note, and typed the title like a header on a chapter of my life. Operation Aging Out of Your Bullshit. Then I started planning. On the drive home, I passed the yoga studio where I used to go. Gentle flow for all ages, the sign said. I'd stopped going after Mark joked that I looked like a brave little tree trunk in Warrior 2. Back then, I laughed. I laughed at a lot of things that weren't funny. Our house sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac. 2-story, white siding, black shutters, the kind of place real estate sites call charming and women call a full-time job. I pulled into the driveway, past Mark's sleek little sedan and my aging SUV that still smelled faintly of soccer practices and spilled fries. Inside, the kitchen counter was littered with his coffee mug, his protein shaker, his laptop open to a spreadsheet, and a half-eaten granola bar. My life in objects. I set my purse down and just looked around. This was the stage I'd built. The house, the meals, the birthday parties, the retirement accounts, the 401k contributions I'd nagged him into. I'd even helped him rehearse for the interview that got him his current VP title. In his version of the story, I was a supporting character. In reality, I'd written half the script. We met when I was 32 and he was 38. He liked to joke I was the young one, his little genius accountant who kept him from getting audited into oblivion. I built my own small tax consulting business from our dining table, then from a tiny office above a dentist's practice. Meanwhile, he climbed the corporate ladder in marketing, shining in rooms I had ironed his shirts for. At holidays, his mother would pat my hand and say, "You take such good care of Mark, you're his rock." Which sounded sweet until you realized rocks don't move. Children never happened, not for lack of trying. We rode the roller coaster, pills, appointments, awkward conversations with strangers in white coats. In the end, my body quietly voted no. Mark said it was okay. It's us against the world, he'd whisper, kissing my forehead. You're all I need. Apparently all he needed came with better contouring and a LinkedIn profile. As I made myself a cup of tea, my phone buzzed. A calendar alert. Friday, Mark client dinner, 7:30 p.m., Skyline 42 rooftop. Skyline 42, of course. White tablecloths, floor-to-ceiling windows, cocktails with smoke pouring out of them like they escaped a magic show. We'd celebrated our 20th anniversary there. I still had the dress. I also had the bill. I took my mug to the dining table, opened my laptop, and pulled up our joint accounts. Years of numbers stared back at me, neat columns of deposits and withdrawals, the quiet heartbeat of our shared life. Rent, mortgage, his car lease, gym membership, dinners, hotel stays. I scrolled. Skyline 42. Skyline 42 again. Hilton downtown, a boutique hotel I didn't recognize. I zoomed in on the hotel charge, clicked through to the statement details, and saw the date. The night he told me he was working late on a new campaign. I remembered microwaving leftover lasagna, eating alone at the counter while watching a cooking show I wasn't really tasting. My stomach twisted. He hadn't even cleared his history, financially or emotionally. I'd been reconciling our accounts every month, and somehow I'd missed the pattern. Maybe because I trusted the man attached to the numbers. I closed the laptop gently. No dramatic slam. If this was going to be a war, I didn't have to be loud. I just had to be accurate. On the fridge, our anniversary photo was held up by a souvenir magnet. Mark in a suit, me in that navy dress from Skyline 42, his arm draped over my shoulders like I was part of the furniture. Background decor. Tasteful, reliable, replaceable. I studied my smiling face. That's on you, I told my reflection in the glass. You taught him I would survive on crumbs. Then, for the first time in a long time, I took the photo down. I didn't cry. I made a list. The next morning, I woke up before Mark. Years of early tax seasons trained me well. He was snoring softly, one arm flung over his eyes like life was too bright. I watched him for a minute. This was the man someone thought was an upgrade. In the kitchen, I poured coffee into his favorite travel mug, the dented metal one from some company retreat. Old habits die hard. I still added the exact amount of cream he liked. Then I put the mug on the counter and didn't put the lid on. Baby steps. He shuffled in a few minutes later, tie draped around his neck, shirt half buttoned. Morning, kiddo, he yawned, kissing the air somewhere near my cheek. Big presentation today. Rooftop big or hotel big? I asked, stirring my own coffee. He frowned. What? Nothing, knock 'em dead. I smiled, too wide. He eyed me for a second, shrugged, then grabbed the lidless mug. You're the best. Yes, I said, I am. When the front door shut behind him, I opened my laptop again. This time, I pulled up his company's website, then his team page. There she was. Tara, senior brand strategist. Perfect headshot, soft lighting, hair blown out like a shampoo commercial. Underneath, her bio bragged about fresh ideas and dynamic energy. I'd bet good money it didn't mention dating upper management. I clicked to her LinkedIn. Public, of course. Scree. There, in one of the tagged photos at a conference reception, was Mark, hand a little too close to her lower back, her head tilted toward him, like he was saying something hilarious. Funny. At the time, he'd told me they were just networking. Then I made my biggest mistake of the morning. I clicked on her Instagram. It was like entering a parallel universe where only good angles survive. Yoga poses on a beach, mirror selfies in gym clothes, cappuccinos with little hearts in the foam. Stories from rooftop bars, cocktail in focus, skyline blurred in the background. One clip stopped my thumb. Tara laughing into the camera, the city behind her. Caption: Some men just need to admit they've outgrown their old life. Here's to new chapters. I played the video with sound. His wife is sweet, but you know, she told whoever was filming. He says she's anxious, controlling, doesn't understand his world. She's almost 60 and refuses to evolve. At some point, it's just sad. My jaw clenched so hard I thought my crown would pop off. Anxious? I was the one who kept their life from collapsing. Controlling? I'd literally built him a retirement spreadsheet. Refused to evolve? I'd adapted around his every whim for 20 years. I took a screenshot, then another. Saved the story. If they were going to narrate my extinction, I was at least going to keep receipts. An idea flickered. I clicked over to my email and opened my drafts. My cursor hovered, Then I typed, reservation for 4 at Skyline 42, Friday 7:30 p.m. I added my name and phone number, hit send, and sat back. 4 seats, 2 cheaters, 1 wife, 1 question mark. Because if Tara had a public Instagram, I wondered what else she had. I googled her name, added the city. A few lines down, a small line of text made my heart jump. Tara Jackson and Gary Mitchell, wedding registry. Married. Of course she was. I clicked the registry link. Their smiling faces beamed at me from 3 years ago, holding champagne flutes, surrounded by fairy lights. His arm wrapped around her waist, her hand on his chest. They looked disgustingly happy. "Hi, Gary," I murmured to the screen. "Nice to meet you. I think your wife is dating my husband." I copied his name, searched again. Found him on LinkedIn, software engineer, liked articles about cybersecurity and craft beer. Then I found a Facebook profile with the same photo. Messages were open. I stared at the message button for a long time, heart racing. This was the line. Once I crossed it, we were no longer a struggling marriage. We were a case file. I took a deep breath and typed, "Hi Gary, you don't know me, but I think we might be sharing the same +1. Then I hit send. Gary wrote back in under 10 minutes, which told me 2 things. 1, he checked his messages way too often. 2, his gut had probably been whispering to him for a while. "Hi, who is this?" He replied, "And what do you mean?" I typed, deleted, retyped, then finally sent screenshots. The Instagram story, the conference photo, a cropped image of Mark's arm around Tara at the bar. I added, "My name is Olivia. I've been married to Mark for 24 years. He works with your wife. I think they're more than colleagues." The typing dots on my screen appeared, vanished, appeared again. My heart pounded like I was taking an exam I hadn't studied for. Finally, "Can we talk? Not over text, please." We agreed to meet that evening at a cafe near the tech campus where he worked. Public, bright, full of laptops, and people pretending not to eavesdrop. I got there early, ordered a latte, and sat by the window. My hands trembled just enough that I had to steady the cup with both palms. I wore my navy blazer, the one I used for client meetings when I needed to feel like a woman who had answers. Gary walked in a few minutes later, scanning the room. Mid-30s, beard, flannel shirt, the exhausted look of a man who owned too many hoodies and not enough emotional stability. He spotted me, hesitated, then approached. "Olivia?" "Yes." I stood, shook his hand. His grip was clammy. We sat. For a moment, the only sound between us was the hiss of the espresso machine and someone's keyboard clacking like a tiny machine gun. "I don't want to believe you," he said finally. "But I also really do." "That's how I feel about gluten," I said. "And yet here we are." He huffed out a surprised, pained little laugh. "Can I see the rest?" I laid my phone on the table, scrolling through everything I had. The charges to Skyline 42, the hotel bills, Tara's video. I watched his face as he read, the color draining like someone had slowly pulled a plug. "She told me those nights were late campaigns." His voice cracked. "We had a fight last month because she said I didn't support her ambition." I sipped my latte. Ah, yes. Ambition. That old code word. He stared at the table, jaw tight. I thought, maybe I was being insecure. My friend said I was lucky to have someone like her. Younger, driven, you know? We've been trying to have a baby. She said she needed space. I didn't want to be needy. A familiar ache settled in my chest. Women get called needy for wanting respect. Men get called needy for wanting loyalty. Funny system. He rubbed his temples. "So what do we do?" I surprised myself with how calm my answer was. "Well, Gary, I booked a dinner for 4 on Friday. Skyline 42. 7:30. He blinked. "You did what?" "My husband thinks he's meeting a client," I said. "Your wife thinks she's being taken out for a romantic night where everything changes, and they're both right in a way." He stared at me, a slow understanding dawning. "You want us to show up?" "I want them," I said, "to walk into that restaurant expecting a promotion and find their performance review instead." He sat back, letting out a low whistle. "Lau, you're intense." "I'm an accountant," I said. "We handle audits." For the first time, he really looked at me. "Are you sure you want to do this? I mean, maybe we should just confront them privately, at home." "Gary," I said gently, "I've spent 20 years being quiet in my own house. If I confront him there, he'll tell me I'm overreacting, that I misread everything. He'll cry, he'll talk about his stress, his midlife crisis, his vitamin D levels. I'll end up comforting the man who cheated on me." He swallowed. At least in public, I continued. He has to use his indoor voice. He was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Okay, I'm in. Good. I slid a folded napkin across the table. Write down your email. I'll send you anything my lawyer gives me between now and then. Lawyer? His eyes widened. I smiled, small and sharp. You don't really think I'd plan dinner before calling one, do you? The next day I sat in a conference room that smelled like leather chairs and quiet divorces. My lawyer, Denise, was a woman in her early 40s, with sharp cheekbones, sharp eyes, and an even sharper pen. She wore a simple black dress and a watch that said, I bill by the hour and I'm worth it. So, she said, clicking her pen, tell me why you're here. I laid the printed statements, screenshots, and a neatly organized list of assets on the table, like I was presenting a tax case. Which in a way, I was. My husband is having an affair with a coworker, I said. I have financial and digital proof. I don't want to scream. I want to separate our lives with as little collateral damage as possible, except for his ego. That can suffer. One corner of her mouth lifted. I like you already. We went through everything. The house, my business, his salary, our investments. She asked questions, I answered. Numbers calmed me. Numbers were neutral. Numbers didn't call you aging out. So what do you want, Olivia? She finally asked. Bottom line. I want out, I said, with my share of what I built. I don't want him controlling the narrative. And I'd prefer not to light my life on fire in the process. She nodded. We can file. No need to tell him until you're ready, but the paperwork will be in motion. You'll need to secure your accounts, especially if he tends to act out when cornered. Oh, he's more of a sulker than a thrower, I said. He weaponizes silence, not plates. Still, she said, move half of all joint liquid assets into an account in your name. Close shared credit cards and open one for yourself. Make copies of every document, including his retirement accounts and any stock options. Do it quietly, neatly. Think of this as packing a suitcase while he's in the shower. That, I said, I can do. As I left her office, I caught my reflection in the elevator door. Same face, same gray streaks, same lines. And yet something had shifted. There was a steadiness in my eyes I hadn't seen in years. On the way home, I stopped at a department store and bought a new lipstick. Not because I believed revenge required red lips, but because I wanted to see my mouth and not recognize the woman who always kept it shut. The shade was called Second Act. I almost laughed out loud in the aisle. At home, I moved through the afternoon like a ghost with a spreadsheet. Opened accounts, shifted funds, scanned documents, sent encrypted files to Denise. Each completed task felt like a tiny, quiet revolution. When Mark came home that evening, he dropped his laptop bag on the bench and kissed my hair. Long day, he sighed. Big dinner Friday. Huge opportunity. I heard, I said, putting my mug in the dishwasher. Do I know this client? He loosened his tie. Nah. Tech startup guy, you'd be bored. You don't even like rooftop bars. I wiped an invisible spot on the counter. Right, must be confusing me with your dynamic evolving colleague. He frowned. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, I said lightly. I'm just aging out of small talk. He studied me, sensing something off but not quite sure what. You okay, Liv? I met his eyes. I'm fine, Mark. I just realized today that I've been undercharging for my services. He chuckled, already reaching for his phone. Well, as long as you're not planning to raise my rates. Oh, I said softly, mostly to myself, you have no idea. Thursday afternoon, the day before the big dinner, I sent 3 texts. To Mark, change of plans. I'd love to join you tomorrow at Skyline 42. I booked us a table at 7:30. Let's make it a double with your star Tara. I'd like to finally meet the woman you brag about so much. My treat? To Tara. Hi Tara, it's Olivia, Mark's wife. He speaks so highly of you. I thought it'd be fun to all have dinner together at Skyline 42 tomorrow at 7:30. I reserved a table for 4. Hope you can make it. To Gary. They've been invited. Bring whatever you need to bring. Papers, questions, courage. Wear something you'll feel good in when you walk out. Mark replied first. Wow, that's unexpected. Sure, if you're up for it. Tara's great, you'll like her. Big client, though. Might be boring. I stared at the word client until the letters blurred. Then I wrote back. I'm impossible to bore lately. See you there. Tara's response came 20 minutes later. Hi, Olivia. Wow, so nice of you to reach out. I've heard so much about you. Would love to join if that works with Mark's schedule. I could practically hear the fake chirp in her voice. I answered, already confirmed with him. It'll be great to put a face to the name. Gary just wrote, on my way to buy a suit that fits. See you there. That night, I stood in front of my closet longer than I cared to admit. I tried on 3 dresses, 2 blouses, 1 ill-advised jumpsuit, and ended up back in the navy dress from our 20th anniversary. The one from Skyline 42. It still fit. So did I. I had just convinced myself I didn't. I laid the dress on the bed, then pulled out a small folder from my desk. Copies of the hotel bills, printouts of the Instagram story, a fresh letter Denise had emailed that morning confirming our divorce petition had been filed with the court. I slipped everything into a slim leather portfolio, the kind I used for presenting to serious clients. I guess, in a way, I was. Downstairs, Mark was sprawled on the couch, phone in hand, TV on some game show where people guessed prices of things they didn't need. Big night tomorrow, he said, eyes on the screen. Try not to let Tara intimidate you. She's intense but sweet. I'm 58, Mark, I said. I don't get intimidated by women who pay interest on their credit card. He laughed, assuming I was joking. That's my girl, you'll like her, she keeps me young. I tilted my head. And here I thought that was my job. He finally looked at me. You okay? You've been different this week. I'm fine, I said, and for once it was true. Just thinking about timelines. Timelines? Where things start, I said. Where they end. When they expire. He shook his head, chuckling. You accountants, always about dates. I smiled. Exactly. When he went to bed, I stayed at the kitchen island, alone with my portfolio and a glass of wine. I thought of the years I'd spent trying to make things easier for him, explaining tax brackets, filling out forms, smoothing his rough edges for family dinners. Tomorrow I would do something I'd never done. I would let reality hit him without padding. I turned off the lights, leaving only the under-cabinet glow on. The leather folder sat on the counter, neat and silent. My version of a bomb. Friday night, the elevator doors slid open to the 42nd floor, and there it was. Skyline 42, all glass and soft light, the city spread out below like a circuit board. A hostess greeted us with a practiced smile. Welcome back, Mr. and Mrs. Carter. I watched Mark's shoulders straighten a little. Men love being recognized by places they can barely afford. Table for 4 under Olivia Carter, I said. By the window, if possible. She led us to a corner table with a view so dramatic it almost felt rude to be sad in front of it. 2 empty chairs faced ours. A candle flickered between the place settings, reflecting in the wine glasses like tiny spotlights. Mark checked his watch. They're running a little late. Tara texted. She and the client are parking. Of course, I said. Can't rush a grand entrance. He frowned. You sure you're okay with this? I don't want you to feel out of place. Oh, I'm exactly where I need to be, I said. He missed the meaning entirely, busy adjusting his cufflinks, the same lucky ones I'd ironed shirts around for years. I took a sip of water, feeling my heartbeat sync with the clink of glassware, the hum of low conversation around us. Something fluttered in my chest. Nerves, yes, but also a strange thrill. I was no longer waiting to see what would happen to me. I had written this scene. Olivia, I turned toward the voice. Tara approached in a fitted dress that probably had its own Instagram account. Her hair was glossy, lipstick perfect, smile wide. Beside her walked Gary, cleaned up in a navy suit. He looked nothing like the man in flannel from the cafe. He looked ready. Mark stood, surprise flickering over his face. Gary, what are... Hi, honey, Tara said quickly, touching Mark's arm, eyes wide with warning. This is... her husband, Gary said calmly, extending a hand to Mark. We've heard so much about each other. For a second, it was beautiful, the pure, raw confusion on both their faces. Mark's hand hovered between them like it couldn't decide who it belonged to. I stood, smile polite. Tara, you look lovely. Thank you for joining us. Gary, glad you could make it. The hostess appeared with menus, completely unaware she'd walked into a minefield. Can I start you off with something to drink? Yes, I said. A bottle of your Cabernet, please. Something mature, with depth. Mark gave me a look. Tara's eyes darted between the 3 of us, mind racing. Gary calmly pulled out her chair. She sat, stiff, like she'd suddenly discovered her dress had shrunk. So, Mark said, after the hostess left, this is unexpected. Life is full of surprises, I said, Like learning your colleague is married, or that your spouse has a rooftop habit. Tara let out a strained laugh. Well, this is fun, a little double date. Gary folded his napkin slowly, mocked deliberately. Is that what we're calling it? The waiter poured wine. I watched the deep red swirl into my glass, catching the candlelight. Aging had done good things to wine. Why not to me? I lifted my glass. To new chapters, I said, and to finally getting everyone in the same room. We all drank. Well, 3 of us did. Mark just stared at me over the rim of his glass, eyes narrowing slightly. Olivia, he said, voice low. What's going on? I set my glass down gently, aligning the stem with the crease of my napkin, like a tiny ritual. Oh, Mark, I said quietly. You're the storyteller. Why don't you explain to Gary why you've been spending so much time mentoring his wife? The candle flickered. Somewhere behind us, a barista frothed milk. A couple at the next table laughed at something on a phone. At ours, no one laughed at all. Not yet. Mark cleared his throat the way he did when about to spin something. Okay, he said, forcing a chuckle. This is a little dramatic. Tara and I work together. We've been collaborating on a big account. I just wanted my wife to meet the team, and Gary, of course, is. Her husband, Gary repeated, voice flat. Who thought she was working late on those big accounts? Tara shot him a glare. Gary, not here. Why not here? I asked mildly, unfolding my napkin. Seems as good a place as any. Great lighting, excellent acoustics. Mark leaned toward me. Olivia, can we not do this? You're being emotional. I smiled. Am I? That's so unlike me. Usually I just quietly fix your messes. The waiter appeared to take our orders, blissfully unaware he was wading through nuclear fallout. We all picked something at random. No one would taste it anyway. When he left, I reached into my leather portfolio and placed a thin stack of papers on the table between us. This, I said, is a printout of our joint account statements for the last 2 years. Notice anything fun, Mark? Color crept up his neck. This is ridiculous. And this, I continued, layering another page, is a compilation of charges to Skyline 42 and various hotels on nights you told me you were with clients or stuck in traffic. Funny how traffic usually ends in a king-size bed. Olivia, he hissed, lower your voice. Why? I kept my tone calm. Are you worried someone might overhear that you're unimaginative enough to cheat with a woman who posts evidence on Instagram? Tara bristled. Wow, that's a little harsh. Oh, don't worry, I said. You come off great on camera. Very dynamic. Especially that story where you talk about men outgrowing their old lives. I loved the part where you called me sad. Her mouth opened, closed. You saw that? I did. And then I saw this. I slid my phone across the table, where their conference photo and hotel receipts were neatly collaged. It's quite a portfolio. Gary watched Tara, eyes glassy but focused. Is it true? He asked softly. Just yes or no. She swallowed. We were going to tell you, after things settled down. Ah, I said. The famous after. So many people live their whole lives waiting for that season. Mark slammed his hand lightly on the table, silverware rattling. Okay, enough. Olivia, you're making a scene. I looked around. The couple at the next table glanced over, intrigued. The bartender pretended not to listen harder. This, I said. This isn't a scene, Mark. This is a review. I laid one last document down, a letterhead with Denise's name at the top. That, I said, is confirmation that I filed for divorce this week. No fault, but with all the appropriate documentation of your extracurriculars attached. Half the assets we built together will be moved into my name. My business remains mine entirely. You'll get a copy by mail, but I thought you deserved a sneak peek. His face went from red to pale in seconds. You filed? Without even talking to me? I tilted my head. You started interviewing for my replacement without talking to me. I'm just matching your communication style. Tara whispered. Oh my God. Gary reached into his own jacket and pulled out an envelope. He set it gently in front of her. These are for you, he said quietly. My lawyer says I have a good case. Adultery doesn't look great in community property discussions. Tara's hands trembled. Gary, please, we can. I spent 3 years thinking I wasn't enough, he said, voice shaking but steady. Turns out I was just in the wrong audition. The candle between us burned down another centimeter. The city lights blinked outside, indifferent. Mark looked at me like I'd become a stranger. You're really going to blow up our life over this? Our life? I repeated. You lit the match, I just opened the windows. Mark opened his mouth, then closed it, like a fish who just realized the bowl had cracks. "You don't have to do this," he said. "We can fix it. We'll go to therapy. I'll end things with Tara. This doesn't have to be permanent." Tara flinched at "end things." I almost felt bad for her. Almost. "Sweetheart," I said, "I'm 58. I don't buy green bananas, and I don't invest in men who only find their conscience when they're cornered." He stared at me. "Since when are you this cold?" "It's not cold," I said. "It's clarity. Feels like taking off a heavy coat in spring." Gary shifted, looking between us. "You said there was some truth you wanted to share," he reminded me quietly. I nodded. "Right. The part that actually hurts." Both Mark and Tara tensed. "You've both been operating under a very flattering illusion," I said, folding my hands. "You think you're the ones writing this story, that you're planning some brave leap into your new life, where he trades in his old model wife and you trade in your stable husband for a more exciting upgrade. Very cinematic." Tara's eyes flashed. "You don't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly," I said. "Let me correct the record." I turned to Mark. "First, the house? It's in both our names, but the mortgage has been paid mostly from my business account for the last 5 years. Denise has the documents. A judge will love that." His mouth tightened. "Second, your car lease, your gym membership, your little weekend conferences." I lifted a shoulder. "All conveniently tied to the joint card I just froze this afternoon." He blinked. "You what?" "Third," I continued, "that promotion you're so excited about, the one you've been promising Tara will change everything?" Tara leaned forward. "What about it?" I looked at her, almost gently. "The board met yesterday." "I know, because I was there." She frowned. "You were what?" Mark shook his head. "That's ridiculous. You're not on the board." "Not as your wife," I agreed. "As an investor." I let that sink in. Mark stared at me like I'd spoken in another language. "Remember when your company nearly folded 8 years ago?" I asked softly. "The market tanked. You were 2 payrolls away from layoffs. Your CEO was talking about tough decisions. You came home that night white as a sheet. I ran numbers and told you if someone infused cash, you could survive. You said no one would." His eyes narrowed. "We got a private investor?" "Yes," I said. We did." He blinked. "Twice." "You?" I nodded. "I used inheritance from my parents and profits from my firm, quietly, anonymously, because I believed in the company and foolishly in you. In return, I got equity, a small piece then, a bigger one later." Tara's face drained of color. "So you're currently," I said, "one of the largest individual shareholders. Not majority, but enough." Gary let out a soft, disbelieving whistle. "The board has been unimpressed with the idea of a messy workplace affair at VP level." I went on. "Especially when the VP in question is being sued for divorce with documented infidelity. HR had a lot to say. So did legal. So yesterday, they voted." Mark's voice was barely a whisper. "Voted what?" "That your promotion would go to someone else," I said. "And that your current position would be restructured, with severance, if you sign the exit agreement and go quietly. If not, they're prepared to make things public." He stared at me like the room was tilting. You did this to me?" "No," I said calmly. "You did this to yourself. I simply stopped protecting you from the consequences." I turned to Tara. "As for you, darling, HR will be in touch about company policy, something about fraternization, power dynamics. You might want to update your resume, maybe leave the Instagram handle off." Tears pooled in her eyes. "You ruined us." I shook my head. "I told the truth. You two did the ruining." The candle between us finally sputtered out, a thin trail of smoke curling upward. Outside, the city lights kept shining. Inside, 2 people finally realized they were not the main characters of this particular story. We ended the evening with dessert, because if my life was collapsing, I was at least going to have creme brulee. No one else ate much. Mark stared at the tablecloth. Tara dabbed at her eyes. Gary methodically finished his steak like a man who'd decided to nourish himself out of spite. When the bill came, the waiter placed it delicately between Mark and me. "I've got it," I said, reaching for my card, my new personal card. "Consider it a farewell party." Mark looked up at me, eyes raw. "So that's it? 24 years and you're just done?" I met his gaze, really looked at him. The man I'd loved, the boy he'd been, the stranger he'd become. "I'm not just done," I said quietly. "I was done a long time ago. I just finally have the paperwork to match." He swallowed. "I made a mistake." I nodded. Several, repeatedly with great enthusiasm. Can't you forgive me? I can, I said. I'm just not going to live with you. We stood in the foyer, waiting for the elevator. Tara and Gary stood a few feet away, locked in a low, intense conversation. I heard snatches: therapy, trust, time apart. Their story would go wherever they took it. Mine no longer depended on either of them. When the elevator arrived, we all stepped in together, the world's most awkward carpool. The doors closed, sealing us in with the soft hum of machinery and our separate futures. On the ground floor, we spilled out into the lobby. Glass, marble, polished chrome. Tara reached for Mark's hand. He hesitated. I watched, almost detached, as they negotiated whatever came next. Good night, Mark, I said. The lawyer will be in touch. Try not to sign anything without reading it first. Adulting is hard. Where will you go? He asked. Home, I said. For now. Then somewhere that's mine. Gary walked me to the curb while they lingered under a palm plant that wasn't fooling anyone. You okay? He asked. No, I said honestly, but I'm right. That'll do for tonight. He smiled, tired but genuine. Thank you for showing me the truth, even if it sucked. Likewise, I said. At least now we know we weren't crazy. Just catastrophically underinformed. A rideshare pulled up for him. He opened the door, then paused. If you ever want to grab coffee again, as two people who survived the same explosion. I'd like that, I said. Maybe somewhere with bad lighting. I'm aging, remember? He laughed, shaking his head. You're not aging out, Olivia. You're just getting very, very sharp. When he left, I stood alone for a moment, the night air cool on my face. The city buzzed around me, oblivious. Life going on. People on first dates, last chances, grocery runs. At home, the house felt different. Not haunted, just quieter. I changed into soft pajamas, washed off my makeup, and stood in front of the bathroom mirror. Same face, same gray streaks, same lines. I smiled at myself, small and real. You did it, I told the woman staring back. You finally cast yourself. Later, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. I opened a blank document and wrote, Chapter 1, the night his mistress mocked my expiration date. I stared at the blinking cursor, then kept typing. Maybe it would be a book, maybe a blog, maybe just a folder of stories I told myself so I'd never forget. Either way, for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of the future tense. I wasn't aging out. I was aging into myself. 6 months after the rooftop dinner, the house doesn't feel like a museum of my bad decisions anymore. The picture on the fridge isn't our anniversary photo now. It's a slightly crooked Polaroid of me and my sister on a beach in Florida, hair a mess, both of us laughing so hard the horizon is tilted. Under it, I stuck a yellow post-it that says, Reminder, you're not furniture. The divorce went through smoother than anyone expected, mostly because Mark didn't have the energy or money to fight once the board finalized his exit package. He moved into a sleek little apartment downtown with glass walls and echoey rooms. Tara didn't move in with him, at least not yet. The affair, it turns out, didn't survive unemployment and HR investigations. I didn't dance on the grave of our marriage. I just quietly planted something there. I turned the smallest bedroom into an office for real this time. No more folding tables in the dining room. I bought a proper desk, a good chair, and a ridiculously expensive lamp that makes everything look like golden hour. In that room, between client calls, I write. The document that started as Chapter 1 grew into a string of essays about aging, endings, and the stupid things women forgive in the name of love. A small online magazine picked up one. Then another. One night I opened my email and saw, We'd love to talk about a collection. Gary and I see each other sometimes, not in a tragic, maybe we'll get together way. Just two people who survived the same storm meeting for coffee. He shows me photos of the dog he finally adopted. I make fun of his boring mugs. Sometimes, late at night, I catch my reflection in the dark window. Gray streaks, soft jawline, the whole unfiltered story of my face. And instead of flinching, I think, you are not aging out. You are finally growing into the woman you were supposed to be. And for the first time in a very long time, I sleep like someone who is no longer waiting to be chosen.